Six, welcome back to history. Yesterday we got introduced to a lot of evolution. We called it the Paleolithic Age, the Old Stone Age. Um, we balanced a lot of what your history book taught us compared to what we know in the Bible. And what we learned from it is people obviously did whatever it took to have food, whether that's being a nomad and traveling around and hunting and gathering, living in caves and tents, trying to find a good climate for that, or what we're going to talk about today, they're going to learn how to settle down and develop those things. So, a lot of what we talked about yesterday, guys, is common sense, but a lot of it is also obviously evolution. And historians want to believe the Earth is millions of years old, and it took thousands of years for humans to develop this stuff, to think about language and things like that. I think we've got to give credit to God, obviously, and the human race that He created, that He said, I can put humans on this planet, and I can give those humans the knowledge of how to communicate, how to make art, how to make weapons, how to make tools, how to make shelters, and do all those things right from the start. Today, we're going to talk about a very important lesson. I'm only going to take half of it today so that I don't go as long as I did yesterday. Sorry for the long video yesterday. Hopefully you made it through it. So today we're going to talk about what we call the agricultural revolution. And the essential question is, how do people adapt to their environments? The agricultural revolution allowed people to set up permanent settlements. So this is going to be the go-between. As long as I can set up a settlement, guys, I can stay in one place. As soon as I stay in one place, I'm going to develop into a civilization. So what we're going to talk about today and tomorrow, especially in the lesson, about how we have civilizations that we can study in history because of agriculture. You got your notes out? Let's get ready to roll. The earliest people were nomads who moved from place to place to hunt animals and gather plants. After the last ice age ended, Earth's temperatures rose. As the climate warmed, many nomads moved into areas with mild climates and fertile land. That just makes common sense, that if I want to go someplace, I go where there's nice weather. We do that still today. What do a lot of people do who can afford it? They live in Wisconsin in the summer, and then they head to Florida in the winter. We call them snowbirds. They get away from the snow. They go where there is nice climate. Okay, so people still do that today. Another historical revolution then occurred. For the first time, people began staying in one place to grow grains and vegetables. Gradually, farming replaced hunting and gathering as the main source of food. At the same time, people began to domesticate or tame animals for human use. Animals transported goods provided meat, milk, and wool. Okay, so gradually farming, or what we would say agriculture, but I like the word farming because that makes more sense. Farming is growing plants, guys. Agriculture is growing plants and animals, or raising plants and animals. So this is the main source of food. Okay, they toss out this word to domesticate animals or tame them. Guys, be careful of that. If you remember when we studied creation in catechism class, it said, and on the sixth day God created land creatures, wild animals, and then the next word is livestock. Livestock is domesticated animals. We know Cain and Abel, farmers and shepherds, how Cain brought the farm products and Abel brought the best of his sheep, right? So they're already domesticated from the time we have Adam and Eve, guys. They're already being used for these purposes. Just make sure you keep that in mind. Your history book makes it sound like it takes thousands of years for them to figure that stuff out. The Bible tells us something completely different than that. But obviously, having enough food is really important. Even in biblical times, guys, we know that the people moved around with their animals to make sure they had enough food. Okay, this change in the way people lived marked the beginning of what we call the Neolithic Age. So yesterday you had Paleolithic, which stood for Old Stone Age. Neolithic stands for New Stone. We'll get that as soon as I start to read. So the Neolithic Age, get it in there. It began about 8,000 BC and lasted until about 4,000 BC. So it lasted about 4,000 years. The word Neolithic is Greek for new stone. Calling this time period the New Stone Age, however, is somewhat misleading. Although new stone tools were made, the real change in the Neolithic Age was the shift from hunting and gathering to what we call systematic agriculture, the growing of food on a regular basis. So this is not just, hey, an apple fell from the apple tree and it grew another apple tree. Yay, we lucked out. This is, I am going to clear land, I'm going to plow the soil under, and I am going to plant seeds and harvest seeds, and I am going to do that every year. This will give me the resource that I need to do those things. Okay? This shift from hunting and gathering to food production, however, did not happen quickly. That makes sense in a historian's head. Personally, I think it happened right from the start, so we didn't have to have a major shift happen. Even during the Mesolithic age, which we call the Middle Stone Age, some people continued to hunt and gather while others began to grow their own food. So guys, we have Old Stone Age, Paleolithic, then we have Mesolithic, the Middle Stone Age, and then we move into Neolithic, the New Stone Age, guys. And what they're saying is, you bet. I agree with that as far as, yeah, some people are still going to be raised to hunt and gather, so they just keep doing that. Maybe I like moving around. Maybe I like the thrill of the hunt. And other people are like, man, I love knowing I can harvest my crops and stay in one place. Well, good. You do that. I love the thrill of the hunt, so I'm going to keep doing that. That just makes common sense. The map here obviously has a lot of the major crops that they're growing. I'm going to start to teach you a word. It's called staple. Like what I fire through papers, we have what's called a staple crop. A staple crop is something that I can save. It lasts, and I pretty much eat it every day. So guys, wheat is a staple crop. I grind wheat into flour, and I can make my breads from it. Bananas are not a staple crop because bananas don't last. I can't grind a banana into flour that I can store for a long time. So you're going to start to see that when it comes to growing things, guys, the important things that they're growing stuff that will last for them, okay? Because that's the big key. I harvest it, and then I need to make it last the year until I get my next harvest. We saw that with Joseph in Egypt. They grew the grain that they could then make last long enough, okay? Continuing on. Historians called this settled farming during the Neolithic age the agricultural revolution. So guys, you got your blank filled in here. The word revolution refers to any change that has an enormous effect on the people's way of life. So we have the American Revolution. That was a major change in our life. Before that, Britain controlled us. After that, we are a free and independent country. We'll talk about coming up why am I drawing a blank on the machine revolution, what we call that? Here it is, the Industrial Revolution, where all of a sudden we invent machines and industries start mass producing. Before that, everything was made by hand. When we go through the Industrial Revolution, everybody's way of life changes because we invent machines, okay? So while hunters and gatherers ate wild grains they collected, early farmers saved some of the grains that they could eat, but they also saved some of the grains that they could then turn around and plant in their fields. Humans lived differently once they learned how to grow crops and tame animals that produce food. They now could produce a constant supply of food. This allowed the population to grow at a faster rate. Nomads gave up their way of life and began living in settled communities. Some historians consider the agricultural revolution the most important event in human history. Guys, you got to highlight that. More food equals higher population. In other words, what we've done is we've gone back in history and say, if you would go back to yesterday's lesson when we were talking about Paleolithic nomads, groups of 20 or 30, it's not like I get married and I have 10 kids because I can't feed 10 kids. So I get married and I might have one kid. In other words, the groups of 20 or 30 from generation to generation never grew beyond that. Because if you were lucky, you would have 2 kids. Well, then mom and dad die, and you have the 2 kids. They grow up, they marry 2 other kids. They might have 2 kids of their own, but the population in that group stayed about the same because that's about all they could figure out how to feed and make food last. As soon as food's not an issue, now you start to say, hey, the more kids I have, the more kids I have to feed, but the more kids that can stay in this house and help me clear land, haul in wood, harvest, plant, and so population exploded. And once we had enough people, then you had people that could do other things, which we're going to talk about coming up, guys. But believing this might be the most important event in history, I hope you can see that. Not that you have to agree with that, but that just how important it was. Once we figured out how to have food be constant, everything else we're going to talk about today changes. Okay. By 8000 BC, people in Southwest Asia, so I'm in Asia, Southwest Asia, guys, that's biblical. That's Garden of Eden. Began growing wheat and barley, staple crops. Start pounding that word into your head. Anything that I can grind into a flour or last. In China, rice would be a staple crop. I can dry rice and keep it. They also domesticated. They tamed pigs, cows, goats, and sheep. Okay, if you're over here, Southwest Asia, wheat, barley, pigs, cows, goats, sheep. It spread to Europe. By 4000, farming was established as an economic activity in Europe. So we're learning how to make money. At about the same time, around 6000 BC, people began growing wheat and barley in the Nile River Valley. The Nile River, guys, in Egypt, we know how good that is. We'll talk about that when we study Egypt, but you got that from the Bible. Abraham, during a famine, went there. Joseph saved the world from there, and his brothers coming. Farming soon spread along the Nile River and into other regions in Africa. In Central Africa, different types of crops emerged. There, people grew root crops, which are called tubers, which included yams. They also grew fruit crops such as bananas. And so you can see, guys, these would be more of your staple crops, crops that can last, like potatoes and yams. And bananas, obviously, as a climate changes down into Central Africa, you have fruit trees that can prosper and give you a constant supply of food because the trees are always growing. Wheat and barley farming moved eastward into India between 8 and 500, so you got wheat into this one. In 6000 BC, people in northern China were growing a main food grain called millet. So guys, it's a grain. We grind that into flour. We make breads out of those. They were domesticating dogs and pigs. By 5000, farmers in southern Asia. So here we have northern China. Here we literally have southern China. Southern Asia is growing rice. From there, rice farming got down into Asia. Okay, so China has in the north these three, and in the south this one. Okay, so lots of times we put that together and we hear China, we think rice. Change your thinking on that. Last, in Western Hemisphere, between 7 and 5,000 people in Mexico and Central Africa were growing corn. We call it maize, squash, and potatoes. They also domesticated chickens and dogs. Okay, so you got corn down here, you got squash, potatoes, chicken, and dogs. Okay, guys, that's the map that they're showing you here, the different crops that grew there. They all had a crop that grew well in their environment that supplied them a steady source of it. And this is us just thinking when we've discovered how old it is to say, hey, all over the world, people were settling and giving us food. Personally, I think the years are a little high. But we're closer to what we believe in the Bible. All right, let's finish up what we're going to take on today. During the Neolithic age, people settled in villages where they built permanent homes. So we're done with the tent. If we're not a hunter-gatherer, we don't need to move. So I can build something solid because I plan on staying here for the rest of my life. They located villages near fields so that people could plant and grow and harvest their crops easily. People also settled near water, obviously, as special rivers. So rivers is where there's good soil. Rivers where there is plenty of water. River would give you what you need with water, from washing and bathing to drinking to cleaning to cooking my food in it. And as we talk about these new civilizations, guys, we will constantly talk about the struggle of living next to a river when it floods. But you wanted to make life easy, so you live next to it. For all the reasons. Rivers also give you protection, guys. If I live next to a big river and I'm on one side and the bad guys are on the other side, most of them will just leave me alone. It's a natural boundary. Okay. Neolithic farming villages developed throughout Europe, India, Egypt, China, and Mexico. The biggest and earliest known communities have been found in Southwest Asia. One of the oldest communities was Jericho. This farming village grew in an area between present-day Israel and Jordan called the West Bank. The village of Jericho was well established by about 8000 BC, extended across several acres. The area of sun-dried brick houses was surrounded by walls that were several feet thick. So yes, guys, that's the Jericho of the Bible. What does your history book point out is cool about the Jericho of the Bible? That it had a wall several feet thick. Those things still stand today, guys. Jericho's walls came tumbling down. The base of those walls are still discovered today so that we can say, man, Jericho had thick walls. Yep, that's why God took that city out. So I think that's cool that Jericho from the Bible made your history book. Another well-known Neolithic community was Catalahayak. It is in present-day Turkey, so it's up about here, guys. Jericho down here a little bit if you can squint to see your map. Although little evidence of the community remains, historians know that between 67 and 57 BC, it covered 32 acres and was home to about 6,000 people. The people lived in simple mud brick houses that were built close together. What if instead of a front door, your house had a roof door? In Catalahayek, the houses did not have front doors. Instead of going through a door in the wall, people entered their homes through a hole in the roof. They could also walk from house to house across the roofs. People decorated the inside of their homes with wall paintings. So you're down here, they decorate the inside of their home with wall paintings. Okay, I'll give you the Catalahayek, guys. This is what we've dug up today. Okay, so you can see Catalahayek, and what they believe is that you have these little base houses. Now there's no doors or in them, so they say, hey, they must have walked across the roofs. Now that would make sense in a number of reasons, guys. Obviously, if I'm going to cook anything in my house, I have to have a fire going. The smoke's going to rise, so I need a hole in my roof to let the smoke out of. And so people say, hey, I already have an opening, let's just go in. But historians love to think about what is it like to have a city that doesn't have front doors. So we built the houses really close together. And how do I get to my house? I have to walk across your roof. And if I'm walking across your roof, what does that mean? It means I get along with you, doesn't it? That you trust me to walk across your roof. It's also easy for protection, guys, because I obviously have to have a ladder to get up and down my roof. And at night, I just take that ladder and pull it into my house so that a bad guy would have to climb up the city wall and then run across the roof and then drop into my house. Well, I don't know about you, but I would have a fire going to be cooking my dinner, and then I leave that fire going for warmth, and so feel free, bad guy, to drop into my house, but just don't fall on top of a fire. It was a way of protection. Okay, please understand, covered 32 acres. That's because that's what they've dug up, guys. About 6,000 people, that's an absolute guesswork. So they're going to look at the size of this and say, about how many people do we think could live in one of these? Do the math and fill it out. But guys, please understand, if you're looking around this picture, it's not like we can see all the houses. That's what's left, okay? These little mud bricks, and we just do a lot of guesswork what that is, okay? In addition to homes, Catalahayek had special buildings that were shrines. Shrines are holy places. You and I might think of them as temples. These shrines were decorated with images of gods and goddesses. Statues of women giving birth have also been found in the shrines. Both the shrines and the statues show that the role of religion was growing in the lives of the Neolithic people. This is your history book saying at the beginning people weren't smart enough to think of a god. Over time, people are going to start to develop gods. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. We obviously know from the start God had a major role in our lives, guys. Adam and Eve knew that and taught it to their kids, so be careful with that. But yes, obviously, people had holy places to worship. Farmers grew fruit, nuts, and different grains on land outside of Catalahayek. People grew their own food and kept it in storerooms within their homes. They raised sheep, goats, and cattle that provided milk and meat. They ate fish and bird eggs from nearby low-lying wetlands called marshes. Scenes drawn on the walls of the city ruins show that the people of Catalahayek also hunted. So we did what it took to make sure we have enough food. We had animals, but guys, please don't think they killed their own animals very often. Okay, that was mainly used for milk, and every once in a while it would be a feast and you would have a celebration. But in the Bible we know that when you slaughtered an animal you had a celebration and fed the people. But we are learning how to store our food. Awesome. We're going to stop there for today, guys, because we're only halfway through the lesson. The only thing you had to do today was fill out these notes. The worksheet will come tomorrow when we get the rest of the lessons. Blessings on your day.